Hi, I'm Adam Putnam, Florida's Commissioner of Agriculture. I wish I could be with you in person today, but I do appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts by video. First, welcome to the Sunshine State and to Florida Gulf Coast University. Gulf Coast is tucked between Lake Okeechobee, the Florida Everglades, and the Gulf of Mexico, and is home to some of our state's brightest minds working to address our water challenges. For all of these reasons, it's a perfect setting to bring together this impressive group of thought leaders to discuss such a critical topic. Across the nation and around the world, Florida is known for its white sandy beaches, our world-class theme parks, and booming international business centers. As a fifth-generation Floridian, I consider myself lucky to live and raise my family in a state that many people consider the prize for a life well lived someplace else. Last year, on average, 1,000 new people per day moved to Florida. And since 2009, we've seen nearly a 30% increase in the number of tourists who flock to the treasures that we're fortunate to have in our own backyard, with over 100 million visiting just last year. And while we all should be proud that Florida attracts millions of people, it's a special responsibility to be good stewards of our state in the face of these trends. For our future to be realized, for Florida to chart its own course, we must confront our big, complex, ugly challenges head on. And of all the challenges facing our state, I consider water to be our greatest long-term challenge. I believe water is Florida's golden goose. It's vital to every industry in every corner of our state, and Florida's future depends on access to an abundant supply of fresh water. While Florida is surrounded by seas and usually receives abundant rainfall, in some regions during certain times of the year, we're using water faster than nature can provide it. Every corner of our state is now experiencing some form of conflict over water. In Apalachicola, for example, in our panhandle, inadequate water flows have depleted our world-famous oyster resources. There's hardly anything left to harvest. In Central Florida, our tourism capital, there will be a 1/3 of a billion gallon per day shortfall of fresh water by 2030. Lake Okeechobee, on the other hand, discharged hundreds of billions of gallons of water after a wet season just this past year because the dike, aging, is not strong enough to hold as much water as the lake collects. Since the beginning of 2016, the Army Corps of Engineers discharged hundreds of billions of gallons. Think of what we could have done with that water. Water is our greatest asset. It's our common identity in a state like ours where our residents are often from someplace else. And as I've said throughout my career, as a state legislator, a congressman, and now as Commissioner of Agriculture, it is undoubtedly our greatest challenge that cries out for solutions. And water is not just a challenge facing Florida. I think most people in this room would agree that this is a global challenge requiring all of our attention. At the same time that we're witnessing growing conflict over water, we're witnessing growing conflict over food. Florida is the winter fruit and vegetable basket for the United States, and the United States in general is an agriculturally blessed land in that it serves as the breadbasket to the world. Projections indicate that population around the world will grow by 80 million people per year. That's the equivalent of adding a new Germany every year. And as a growing middle class continues to develop around the world, which is a good thing, the first thing that changes is its diet. As soon as people can afford it, they add fruits, vegetables, nuts, and proteins to their diet. This will stress agricultural productivity and water resources all over the planet. By 2050, we will need to produce 69% more calories than we did in 2006. That will require the equivalent of another green revolution. Water is finite but reusable, and the struggle to allocate that water pie and involve new water technologies may well determine conflict, or hopefully the lack of conflict, as we struggle to meet the needs of a 10 billion person population. As we look to the next green revolution, we must rely less on water and use water more efficiently. In Florida, we have best management practices, and they are standard on many of the 47,000 farms and ranches across our state. We have mobile irrigation laboratories that travel the state, assessing water usage on the farms and ranches on site. To give you a sense of that progress, In 1980, 300,000 acres of our state, or 16% of irrigated land, had microjet irrigation. By 2010, that number was 700,000 acres, or 40% of irrigated lands, that had adopted low-volume irrigation techniques, and that number still grows. We've installed nearly 200 weather monitoring stations throughout the state that gives growers real-time, localized data to make decisions on whether to crank the pumps or not, particularly on weather-related events like a cold night. Growers now have more tools to make better decisions that not only save water, but save fuel and money. They've integrated the ability to remotely control their devices to manage their already efficient irrigation systems. Because of the new technologies and best practices that our farmers have adopted in Florida alone, agriculture is saving the equivalent of 12 billion gallons of water per year. Florida's signature crop, citrus, has completely transformed itself by adopting these new techniques. Today, 95% of citrus growers are using drip irrigation technologies, which occupies a footprint of nearly 400,000 acres across our state. The citrus industry alone is saving 4 billion gallons of water per year. And as the citrus industry is attempting to rebound from a devastating disease, we're incentivizing growers to use the latest drip irrigation technologies when they replant their groves. On top of all of this, Florida has made the conservation of working agricultural lands and their environmental benefits a top priority. Since 2011, we've used conservation easements to permanently preserve more than 24,000 acres of environmentally sensitive farms and ranches from development. These easements also allow the land and agricultural operations to continue to operate and contribute to Florida's economy. But solving this challenge cannot just fall on the backs of farmers and ranchers. All sectors of water users have to continue to make strides to improve efficiency. Per capita use of water in the state of Florida is lower today than it's ever been and continues to fall statewide despite the continuous population increases. Even though 1,000 new people per day are moving to our state, we're using less water per capita. Through water conservation, through the development of new technologies inside and outside the home, and the development of alternative water sources, we continue to reduce our overall consumption of water. And I'm excited that you'll get to see these innovative solutions firsthand this week. I can't think of a better example of a forward-thinking community than Babcock Ranch. It's not just taking into consideration the energy and water challenges of today, but it's planning, building, and dreaming about tomorrow. Babcock Ranch is leading Florida into the future of sustainable development and infrastructure. From solar energy production, gray water irrigation systems, and stormwater recovery, it sets the new standard for a sustainable community. It also sets an incredible precedent for future development by working with the state to preserve more than 80% of the original ranch. Babcock Ranch and Babcock Ranch Preserve are a model for others to follow, and with the rapid growth in our state, protecting our natural resources, keeping land and agricultural production, and providing outdoor recreational opportunities for the public are more important than ever. While encouraging the construction of the smart and efficient homes of tomorrow, there's room for continued improvement for water conservation in the homes of today. A few years back, I partnered with the Florida legislature to conserve our natural resources and save residents money on their bills. We created Florida's first tax-free holiday weekend for energy and water-efficient appliances. During this sales tax holiday, Floridians paid no tax on the purchase of Energy Star appliances and WaterSense products that use at least 20% less water. Over the life of these appliances, the efficiencies add up to significant savings for consumers and of our water resources. Using water more efficiently must be a goal, and we must get out of the habit of using water only once. Florida is recycling more than 40% of the total wastewater flows. We've constructed hundreds of domestic wastewater treatment facilities that provide nearly 1 billion gallons of water per day of reclaimed water that can be put back into the system. But conservation and reuse alone will not be enough. The next step must be to explore sources of water that won't be depleted. We must find ways to grow our water supply from sources that are resistant to drought and shortage. Simply put, our water supply options must become more diverse. With all of this in mind, and to address our complex water challenges, Florida took an important first step this past legislative session. With the help of legislative leadership, we passed meaningful water policies that help meet the needs of our growing population and thriving economy while protecting our natural resources. This new law builds upon Florida's strong foundation of science-based water supply and resource development plans, and it enhances our best management practices program. It expedites the protection and restoration of our aquifer, our outstanding Florida springs, and ensures the development and implementation of uniform water supply planning, and a lot more. Even though we've made great progress with this new law, it's just the next step. Our work is not complete. We can't afford to close the book on water policy or shift our attention from one water crisis to the next. Our water policy decisions have to be long-term and can't simply be in reaction to an active hurricane season or a particularly severe drought. Improving the health of our water bodies and growing our water supply to meet future demand will take time, and we have to develop and implement long-term strategies. No one has a monopoly on solutions to this global crisis, and to the extent that there are ways for us to continue to collaborate and partner with one another to meet the diverse water needs from Florida to California and around the globe, this gathering is an important opportunity to do just that. Florida's environment, economy, and quality of life all depend on water. If we want to continue to attract businesses and draw tourists while protecting our natural resources and feeding the nation, we must ensure that we have the water supply to meet our needs, not just for today, but for generations to come. Again, thank you for allowing me to join your important gathering by video, and have a wonderful time while you're in our state. And thank you for your dedication to our precious natural resources.